My wife betrayed me with her co-workers, prompting me to seize everything she cherished in her life. It's essential to always brace ourselves for both the brightest and darkest moments, as life can change in the blink of an eye, either uplifting you or tearing everything apart, just as it did in my case. I'm a 36-year-old man who married my best friend's sister a decade ago. Our relationship extended beyond marriage. We had been dating for 4 years and had known each other since we were around 5 years old. We could aptly be described as childhood sweethearts. Our courtship was a blend of sweetness and bitterness because our relationship nearly jeopardized my friendship with Jacob, her brother. Let's refer to her as Candice, a 30-year-old woman. Candice was not merely my girlfriend, she was my childhood crush and the only woman I had ever truly admired. I viewed her as my soulmate, believing our bond was unbreakable. However, she chose to dissolve that sacred bond, an act that devastated both my life and our daughters. Our marriage had been harmonious, we never lost our love for each other. Candice was always attentive to my needs, and I reciprocated the same care for her. She was an exceptional mother to our 6-year-old daughter, Lily, and possessed a kind-hearted nature that made me hesitant to doubt her over something as serious as infidelity. Professionally, I am a lawyer deeply engrossed in various cases, which often required me to spend long hours with case files in my office, leaving me with less time for my wife. Nevertheless, I always ensured that I was present for her, striving to keep our relationship special and to make her feel the same love she felt for me when I proposed to her a decade ago. Candice worked as an assistant manager in my brother Jacob's company. She was diligent and attentive in her role, never allowing her professional responsibilities to interfere with her duties as a wife or mother. However, after her promotion to a different branch as an assistant manager, our lives took a tumultuous turn. The transition was challenging, leading to frequent arguments. Candice began coming home later than usual, and I initially attributed this to her adjusting to a new work environment with different people. Yet, my doubts and fears intensified the day she returned home heavily intoxicated, accompanied by a friend because she couldn't walk properly. That evening, I had already tucked Lily into bed before helping Candice into our bedroom. While changing her clothes, I noticed 2 prominent hickeys on her back and 1 on her shoulder. A mix of nausea and anxiety churned in my stomach as I tried to remain calm, not wanting to overthink or doubt her without cause. I moved towards the living room to prepare for the next day's case, but the sight of those hickeys kept replaying in my mind, making it difficult to focus. The following day, unable to ignore my suspicions, I decided to confront Candice before she left for work. Her recent cold and irritable demeanor had already been bothering me, and these small details only added to my growing unease. I never anticipated that after 10 years of marital bliss, our relationship would become so strained. Perhaps I believed it was just a temporary phase. Upon entering our bedroom, I noticed her phone incessantly buzzing. My mind raced with questions about who could be texting her so frequently. I approached the desk to check her phone, a device she had never locked during our 10-year marriage. This time, however, the phone was secured with a password. My thoughts spiraled, contemplating our life together, our daughter, and everything we had built. Frustrated, I placed the phone back on the desk and went to prepare breakfast for Candice and Lily in the kitchen. As I set the dishes on the table, I felt a sudden embrace from behind. Turning around, I saw Candice smiling and holding me tightly. I reciprocated the hug, feeling a momentary sense of relief. However, something seemed off. She usually wore a mix of rose and vanilla perfumes, but today she smelled distinctly of men's cologne, and her hair had a smoky scent, as if she had been smoking. These small inconsistencies prevented me from fully relaxing. Candice sat down at the dining table, beaming cheerfully, but I couldn't share in her happiness. I questioned her about her unusually cheerful mood, and she explained that she was happy because I had made her breakfast. Unable to contain myself, I pressed further, asking where she had been the previous night. Her initially bright expression dimmed as she apologized, revealing that she had forgotten to inform me about a welcome party at her new office. She admitted that she had tried to refrain from drinking but ultimately ended up consuming too much alcohol. Her frightened and suspicious demeanor only heightened my concerns. I confronted her about the hickeys and the sudden locking of her phone. In response, she began to exhibit erratic behavior, standing up abruptly, covering her head with her hands, and frantically grabbing her hair. I rushed to her side, attempting to calm her down, but she was screaming and crying uncontrollably. Her outburst frightened me, and she accused me of not recognizing the effort she had been putting into her work, unfairly doubting her fidelity. She labeled me as insensitive for not inquiring about the marks and accused me of making unfounded assumptions. Candice clarified that the marks were actually cigarette burns she had received at a club, suggesting that anyone in her situation might have reacted similarly. Before I could respond, she revealed that her phone password was my birth date and explained that she had to secure it due to sensitive office files. After the intense argument, I went to work, but my mind remained fixated on the possible implications of her behavior. I considered discussing the matter with my brother James, but the privacy of our marriage made me hesitant, fearing it might further upset Candice. Instead, I tried to push the thoughts aside and move on. Upon returning home, I found Lily playing with her toys in the bedroom. I overheard Candice giggling and conversing with someone in a flirtatious manner. Curious and concerned, I approached the room and heard her say, "How red is it?" A puzzling comment. The moment I opened the door, she immediately ended the call and forced a fake laugh. Sensing her fear, I inquired about whom she had been talking to, but she dismissed it as a conversation with just a friend and left the room. It was clear that something was amiss with her behavior, and her attempts to manipulate the situation only deepened my suspicions. That evening, Candice wore a backless top that showcased the prominent hickeys on her neck. The marks were dark and red, unmistakably different from cigarette burns. Despite my love for her, I couldn't ignore the evidence of her infidelity. I couldn't allow myself to be deceived any longer, letting her deceive me right under my nose. 3 weeks had passed since my last update, and it had been an incredibly challenging period for me. My instincts had been correct all along. I wasn't overthinking the situation. Candice continued her deceitful activities, prompting me to take matters into my own hands. One night, I decided to stay awake and check her phone after she had fallen asleep. I noticed that she had been on her phone for 2 consecutive hours, looking anxious while texting someone. I refrained from asking her directly, suspecting she would lie to my face. Eventually, she went back to the bedroom and slept peacefully. Notably, we hadn't been intimate for a month, despite my attempts to initiate. She always claimed she was too tired, but I refused to let that become another point of contention. As I reached for her phone, it began to ring from an unknown number. I answered the call and heard a woman on the other end screaming, threatening to expose her infidelity at work unless she stopped seeing her husband. The woman, named Jenny, was the wife of Matthew, who worked in the same office as Candice. She provided me with her address, insisting that there was something important I needed to know. Experiencing a profound sense of betrayal, I realized the gravity of the situation. The worst feeling in life is being hurt by someone who vowed to stand by you forever. I had hoped my fears were unfounded, but loving her and not wanting to believe the truth made it difficult to accept that her refusal to be intimate with me was due to her affair with a colleague. The next day, I met with Jenny, who was visibly pregnant and younger than both Candice and me. She was 8 months pregnant and revealed that her husband had been unfaithful with Candice. Her eyes welled with tears, and I felt a surge of anger instead of sorrow. It was heartbreaking and cruel to see a pregnant woman suffer from such betrayal, especially knowing that my wife was part of it. Jenny showed me explicit images and a video of Matthew and Candice engaging in sexual activities. She had obtained these from Matthew's phone after a confrontation the previous evening, which had left her feeling threatened and compelled to reach out for help. Overwhelmed by a mixture of emotions, I pleaded with Jenny to send me all the evidence, promising that Candice would face the consequences of destroying our family. Jenny mentioned that she was considering filing for divorce, but I persuaded her to wait a few days so that Candice could experience the fallout of her actions as well. After leaving Jenny's house, I visited my brother James, who has always been a pillar of support in my life. Consumed by anger and despair, I drank heavily beside him until I passed out. When I awoke 2 hours later with a throbbing headache, James was there, gently rubbing my feet after I had a comforting cup of espresso. He began asking me various questions, but I couldn't process them. I handed him my phone, asking him to check the gallery. Upon seeing the images, he looked disgusted and immediately placed the phone on the table. I recounted everything to James, and he provided additional insights, revealing that Candice had been unfaithful even before her recent promotion. Her former team leader, Richard, had exploited her ambition for fame and a higher position, promising to help her advance her career in exchange for her affections. Although Candice was never a gold digger and had earned her own money, her greed for status had led her astray. James, the owner of the company, had been discreetly investigating the matter but hadn't taken action due to a lack of concrete evidence. He had discovered that Candice had been involved with multiple men, not just Matthew, and had used her attractiveness to manipulate and deceive others. Feeling a mix of betrayal and helplessness, I returned home, maintaining a facade of normalcy. Lily ran to me, laughing and giggling, while Candice approached, kissing my lips and announcing that she had prepared my favorite lasagna. The sight made me feel nauseous, and I struggled to eat. Her presence only intensified my resolve to end this toxic relationship. Candice's manipulative nature and consistent gaslighting had pushed me to my breaking point. As I headed to my office, she hugged me from behind, wearing a red set and a slip dress that, while usually beautiful, now appeared repulsive to me. She inquired if I had answered that mysterious call the previous night. I denied it, but she persisted, suggesting I could be honest without her getting angry. Unwilling to fall for her lies, I resisted and kissed her, mirroring her deceptive behavior. She then pushed me onto the bed, whispering that Lily had gone to sleep. I questioned if she was feeling unusually tired, but she looked at me incredulously and refused to respond. Despite my attempts to resist, I succumbed, planning to humiliate her later by revealing that I knew about her deceitful actions. It was the most intense and thrilling encounter we had ever had, and I felt no guilt, knowing it would devastate her once she realized I was aware of her infidelity. She was using me for emotional fulfillment, so I decided to use her in return. After she fell asleep, I quietly left the room and headed to my office, where I noticed 3 missed calls from James. When I returned his call, he asked me to meet him the next day to discuss something he couldn't share over the phone. Inside Lily's room, I watched her play, feeling a deep sense of sorrow and anger toward Candice. The thought of her stealing our daughter's childhood and our happiness made me restless and sleepless, constantly worrying about what lay ahead. I promised to provide another update once everything was resolved. It took some time for me to update everyone, as I was preoccupied with ensuring Candice lost her job and finalizing the divorce. Instead of providing regular updates, I decided to wait until everything was settled. The next morning, I drove to meet James at the company's office. He showed me compelling evidence on his computer, pictures of Candice with various men, including Richard from our school, her former team leader. James had been investigating and discovered that Candice had been involved with multiple men, not just Matthew. The employees had confessed to James that Candice was promiscuous, often visiting clubs and engaging in affairs. Richard had promised her a promotion to assistant manager, which she received in exchange for her companionship, and she had reciprocated with Matthew as well. James had recorded these conversations for the company's internal review, as the organization had strict no-dating policies. The revelation meant that Candice and several other employees faced job termination due to their misconduct. Candice's beauty and charm had allowed her to exploit situations to her advantage, and James's investigation had finally uncovered the truth. He had sent an email to the various branches where Candice and Matthew worked, detailing their inappropriate relationships. Feeling overwhelmed and unsure of what to do next, I sat there in despair until the branch received the email. Candice immediately called me, pleading for me to come home right away. I informed James and rushed back to our house. Upon arriving, I found Candice in tears, crying as she hugged me. I didn't return her embrace, maintaining my distance. She confessed that she had lost her job due to the scandal, but I pressed her for the truth, refusing to accept her fabricated stories. I threatened to show her the incriminating videos of her with her colleagues on the TV, forcing her to confront the reality of her actions. Candice looked at me in disbelief as I explained that I had learned everything from Jenny. She attempted to manipulate the situation again, claiming that I was never present and always too busy with work to notice her infidelity. However, Lily entered the room, and Candice moved to take her, prompting me to intervene and show her that I had already filed for divorce, which was the reason behind her job loss. I explained that I would gain custody of Lily to ensure she wouldn't have to witness the ongoing turmoil. As a lawyer, I was confident in managing the legal proceedings efficiently. Candice began sobbing, pleading for a chance to rectify the situation, but her lack of remorse only fueled my anger. I requested James to take Lily to his home to shield her from the chaos. My heart ached for my daughter, who had been a source of joy and hope since her birth. I never wanted her to experience a fractured family, and seeing her endure this pain was unbearable. I offered Candice the option to inform her brother Jacob, my best friend, about the situation, but she became frightened. I handed her the divorce papers, signaling the end of our marriage, just as her parents and brother arrived to witness her public humiliation. The house, named after our daughter, now held nothing for Candice except her own savings. Her parents, who had come to love me as part of the family, expressed their disappointment and disgust at her actions. Jacob, who had always warned me against marrying Candice, justified his stance by highlighting her ability to ruin both me and our family, proving his concerns were valid. My mother, who had grown to love Candice as her own daughter, also consoled her amidst the humiliation. I read through the divorce papers, informing Candice that she was free to visit and stay with Lily in our home, ensuring that I would never take Lily away from her. I had shown Jacob the evidence, though not the most explicit ones, and honestly, I had lost all respect for Candice. I could have forgiven her for a one-time mistake, but her continued deceit and pride in her wrongdoing were unforgivable. While there were moments when I was indeed busy and couldn't dedicate enough time to her, I had always tried my best and had learned from those shortcomings. I had been blind to her narcissistic tendencies, but the presence of those two hickeys was undeniable proof of her betrayal. Regardless of what had transpired, I couldn't undo the damage, though I did miss the person she once was. My mother offered me a place to stay, but I declined, insisting that I would remain in our home, while Candice would have to find her own space. Candice's parents berated her with harsh words, tarnishing their respectable reputations as writers and doctors. Jenny, on the other hand, also went through a divorce and relocated to a different city to live with her parents. Life after the divorce was challenging, but the satisfaction of seeing Candice lose her job remained a constant source of relief in my heart. Although Lily struggled initially, she found solace in spending time with her grandmother, playing, coloring, and occasionally feeling sad due to missing her mother. As for Candice, she relished her newfound freedom, frequently meeting different men and visiting Lily daily. Our interactions became non-existent as she preferred to keep her distance, often leaving immediately upon arrival while I was already at work. From my window, I observed Matthew dropping her off, followed by another man shortly after. It became clear that her relationships extended beyond just friends. Her affectionate behavior outside the car was another revelation of her ongoing deceit. Reflecting on our 14 years together, I realized how blind I had been to her true nature. If it weren't for the lack of communication, I might never have discovered the extent of her betrayal. Now, a month had passed since the divorce, and I was immersed in my cases, seeing Candice only briefly in passing. I felt an overwhelming sense of emptiness, sadness, and found myself relying on medication to manage depression and anxiety. Meanwhile, Candice thrived without any remorse, occasionally facing humiliation, which provided a small sense of satisfaction for me. Ultimately, Candice taught me a valuable lesson about trust and deception. I had exposed her true self behind the facade, as her parents despised her actions, leading to further professional and personal humiliations. Despite everything, I only wished the best for my daughter, a happy childhood and a bright future filled with love and security.